So I would say to the person who's just starting out that I am insanely jealous of the moment in time when they're starting. If you think about it, when I was starting out, and let's not even get into some of the real fun and exciting stuff like the AI that can be applied to the finance and accounting function, but let's just talk about something basic like expenses. Right? When I started out, expenses came in an envelope or in a file folder, and it was a bunch of receipts taped to a piece of paper that somebody grabbed out of the recycle bin or out of a copy machine. And now you have a place where you have concurrent Expensify and other expense reporting systems where it's mostly, if not entirely, digital. But it's really just a massive change and has gotten so much better since I started. Now, if you look at somebody starting now, so many of the things that caused us headaches 10, 20, 25 years ago are now done by machines or through software. And that trend, as it continues, will not take away the job of the new hire into finance and accounting. What it will do is it'll take away some of the worst parts of their job and make the job more interesting and allow them to actually analyze data as opposed to just process it and check their work, look for errors, find the errors, as opposed to spending all their time doing data entry. Instead of being nervous about starting now, it's an exciting time to be starting out. So I remember when the big trends for the CFO role, and this is 15 or 20 years ago, were related to SOX compliance when that was a new thing, and moving to cloud-based ERPs. And then when I look at the last 5 to 10 years, there isn't something like SOX to point to as a specific development that really drove change in the role. But there has been a huge change, and the real change has sort of been summarized by many folks as the idea of the strategic CFO, what amounts to an expansion of the role and the responsibilities. Compliance and timely and accurate reporting, that's sort of table stakes. There are a lot of now regular CFO functions that previously fell under the COO umbrella. What we've also been seeing is a lot of HR now seems to roll up through the CFO and other groups as well, real estate being another example. Finally, you see, and this is a lot because now a lot falls under the CFO umbrella, the CFO more so than potentially other executives has taken on more of the CIO type role. It means that the CFO and the folks that work for her or him are more involved in the day-to-day operations of the business. And in addition to that, they're also more involved, and this goes back to the idea of the strategic CFO. The CFOs are also more involved in both driving fact-based decision-making, but also involved in actually doing that strategic decision-making at the executive or at the board level. As a manager, after 7 months of COVID, if you haven't heard about a personal situation or difficulty with one of your direct reports, by this point, it's probably because you're not looking hard enough, right? Everybody's had something they need to overcome. And what we've found is that we should all be better at collaboration and remote collaboration just because COVID has forced us to, but there are limits to how well you can collaborate remotely. And the limits are in some cases self-imposed, right? Companies that didn't have Zoom video or some similar tool got one fairly quickly. We've actually always had a remote culture and have always had multiple different ways of communicating, but actually prosecuting and executing on our checklist just became harder. And what we recognized is that a lot of the tasks where maybe they're just the most low-level, boring tasks seem to be getting done more slowly. And I haven't come up with a reason why that is. We are looking at the ways to solve it. Everything that we do that's repetitive, we want to automate. And COVID has exposed that as, maybe our new number one priority. Call it a year ago, if there was a task that probably should be automated, but we could hire a person to do it, we might have just hired the person, got that task done, and focused on other priorities. But now with COVID, we've reprioritized the automation aspect, especially around the close, to at or near the absolute top of the list. So focusing on cash flow forecasting and errors, we know how to forecast our receivables in a manual way. And we know that a machine could do it faster and better. Right? So just very simply, and we'll do this in the next year. We'll let a software tool take over forecasting our receivables. And I am highly, highly confident that once we do that, the results and the forecasting will not only be much more efficient, which in and of itself is valuable, but will also be better. I saw a movie once, it's where there's a quote, they say it's like having speed and power in the NBA. Forecasting our receivables through a true forecasting tool will be extremely helpful for us. And then on the error side, there are two types of errors. There's the error that essentially is the result of a poorly trained or maybe even just bad employee. And then there are the errors that just happen no matter how well somebody is trained and how great of an employee they are. It's the simple errors that get made by the great employee that absolutely drive me insane and can be solved with an automation or AI tool. And what I mean by a simple error, imagine a custom order form that needs to be hand entered into our revenue recognition system, and somebody just transposes a number. And unfortunately, that number is in the millions spot. Anybody can make that mistake. And you make it, and it doesn't get caught probably until you close the books on that month or that quarter. And at that point, it sometimes becomes tough to even track that mistake down. And who knows what reporting has been screwed up at that point. Taking away those types of errors will be exceptionally valuable. Building the team hasn't changed. We want the smart people who want to learn and are competitive and like to win and like to work hard. And the double-edged sword is the type of candidates that I was just describing. They often have a career path and requirements out of their day-to-day work that don't necessarily align with what we need in a hire. And I'll use a specific example. When we're looking to hire a revenue analyst, we want a great revenue analyst. We want someone who can look at the numbers and actually be analyzing them as we're making sure that our rev rec is right, and catch mistakes and do all types of other things. But that great candidate, they don't want to be a revenue analyst for months or years, right? They want to advance up the ladder, and it's very difficult to align the company needs with that hire's needs in particular. And if we can't align it, then we're going to hire a great revenue analyst. They're going to be with us for a year, and then they're going to go somewhere else, which is highly detrimental to building a great team if you can't retain the great people. Now, I think that COVID in many ways has made managers lazy. The time will come back when people will leave again, and you will lose the high performers in your team if you can't figure out a way to get them to stay that isn't just a promotion or giving them a team to manage. You have to do those things as well, but to prepare for the time when folks are now more mobile in their jobs, we've also gone back to the well of automation. My theory is if we can take at least some of the drudgery out of the day-to-day work, especially for the entry-level employees, that will make their job satisfaction that much higher. It will allow them to do some things in their day-to-day job that don't feel quite as rote or repetitive, and it will help us improve our employee retention.